Welcome to our presentation about how we can apply the family systems theory to understand addiction within families. According to family systems theory, individuals cannot be understood in isolation from one another. They must be understood as part of the family system. Because the family is an emotional unit, it's the nature of the family that its members are intensely connected emotionally. There are two kinds of family systems, closed and open. Closed family systems have unspoken rules and roles, unhealthy boundaries, being too rigid or no boundaries at all, no leadership or the leadership roles have been reversed, and there is an unhealthy emotional climate. In open family systems, there are healthy hierarchical leadership from parents, healthy boundaries, and a healthy emotional climate. The more closed a family system is, the more risk there is for one of the members to develop an addiction. The reason a family takes on each role within a family system is so that the system can create a status quo or equilibrium that incorporates every member's role. The roles are not necessarily conscious. The health of the roles within the family has a lot to do with whether or not there are healthy boundaries and secure attachments between members of the family. If there is a family member with an addiction, the family system is going to unconsciously work to maintain equilibrium and still look like a functioning family. How that happens is that each family member is going to take on different roles to support a status quo or homeostasis. Even the person who is struggling with addiction will take on a role as part of the whole. In this picture, we see the scapegoat or the problem child. On the outside, he is hostile, defiant, a rule breaker, and always in trouble. On the inside, he feels rejection, hurt, guilt, jealousy, and anger. And then we have the lost child or the forgotten child. On the outside, they are shy, quiet, live a fantasy life, solitary, mediocre, attaches to things and not people. But on the inside, they feel rejection, hurt, and anxiety. And then we have the victim, the chemically dependent. On the outside, they show hostility, manipulation, aggression, self-pity, blaming. They can be charming, and they have rigid values. On the inside, they feel shame, guilt, fear, pain, and hurt. Next, we have the chief enabler. They're the closest emotionally to the victim, and they are the protector of the family. On the outside, they appear self-righteous, super responsible, sarcastic, passive, they are a martyr, and they can be physically sick. On the inside, they feel anger, hurt, guilt, and low self-esteem. Next, we have the family hero and the caretaker of the family. On the outside, they look like the good kid, the high achiever, follows rules, seeks approval, and very responsible. On the inside, they feel guilt, hurt, and inadequacy. And lastly, we have the mascot or the family clown. On the outside, they appear immature, fragile, cute, hyperactive, and distracting. And on the inside, they feel fear, anxiety, and insecurity. We all know what rules are, spoken and unspoken sets of standards or traditions that tell us how to live. Rules that children struggle with the most are rules they don't understand, rules they disagree with, rules that are different at home than at school, rules based on culture that are misunderstood at school, and unspoken rules. There are two types of addiction, substance and process. Let's explore these two types. Substance addiction includes alcohol and illegal drug addiction, prescription drugs, high fat, high salt, and sugary foods. Here is a video that explains addiction a little bit better.
This may be your brain on drugs, but what actually happens in the mind of someone addicted to drugs? It all starts with the brain, specifically something called the reward center. One of the brain's goals is to keep our physical bodies alive and reproducing. So when we do something good for our survival, like eating delicious food or having sex, our brains produce chemicals that make us feel good. These chemicals are called neurotransmitters, and they're basically the way our brain and body communicate with each other. The brain produces hundreds of neurotransmitters, but when it comes to addiction, the most important one is called dopamine. Dopamine makes us feel good, so we want to do that thing again and again. Basically, our brain is training us like we'd train a new puppy. But learning doesn't always go the way it's supposed to. Substances like heroin or other addictive drugs are the jackpot of the dopamine world. Not only do they produce more dopamine than other activities, they make your brain think that the reward is even better than you remembered. So just like that puppy who wants to sit and get a tasty treat, you want to do more drugs to get that good feeling. Over time, drug use can also change other parts of the brain. Some connections, like the ones related to impulsive behavior and emotional responses, get stronger, and others, like those used in decision-making, get weaker. Those changes can also cause physical dependencies. If you've ever gotten a headache from giving up your morning coffee, you've had a minor experience of what it's like to go through withdrawal. Withdrawing from more serious drugs like alcohol or heroin can cause breathing problems, irregular heart rate, and seizures. Of course, everyone reacts to different drugs in different ways. Lots of people binge drink in college, but most of them won't become alcoholics, and scientists are still trying to figure out why. For all the research that's been done, much of the brain remains a mystery.
Process addictions include pornography or sex, compulsive eating, gambling, video game addiction, and addiction to electronic devices. Here is a video that explains process addiction.
Today I'm going to talk about process addictions, and a lot of families don't really know what a process addiction, but they experience them every day. What we know happens with a process addiction is essentially it creates a rush of dopamine in the brain. So one common one that people fall into all the time is fast food. And so when people go and get a hamburger, it's reinforcing and it creates a rush of dopamine in the brain. And that tells the pleasure centers of the brain to keep pursuing that. And so then it comes again. And eventually what starts to happen to the individual is they have a threshold and they start to crave and need those dopamine, and your body starts to train you that that's the way you're going to get it. Because it's so self-reinforcing, right? Any disappointment in their lives, they've really learned to go to that, to go to that addiction to feel better. Other examples are self-harm. Obviously, there's chemical addictions that we know about, which is drugs and alcohol. It's sex and sexual addiction. We see a lot of adolescents today are sending text, and sexting is what we call it, sending texts of themselves naked to each other. Gaming is a common addiction. I've had clients who have gamed for 40, 50 hours straight. And I had one family that their daughter was gaming and she didn't leave her room for 4 days or take care of herself. To recap, processing addiction is self-harm, it's sex, it's food. We know it increases dopamine in the brain and it reinforces itself. But the problem is it starts to get in the way of their daily lives. And that's really what process addiction is.
How can we protect our families from the harmful effects of addiction? Keep an open family system. Set healthy boundaries. Ensure proper leadership in the family. Keep the emotional and physical climate in balance. Ensure proper equilibrium by finding healthy coping mechanisms to adapt to stress and change. For more information on how to incorporate some of these tips into your life, ask us on the discussion board for additional information.